Hello, hello, and welcome, welcome. I am here with the one, the only CLEONIKI KESIDIS, who's a copywriter for folks who have online courses, online programs, and do this whole digital marketing thing. So, hi, it's so great to see you today.
Yeah, super great. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween! We are recording on Halloween. I love it. I
Yes.
haven't had any candy yet, but
Oh
it's in
no.
my future. It's in my future.
It's still
Uh,
the morning. It's early yet.
it's still the morning, I guess. Well, tell us a little bit about you and your expertise.
Yeah, so I'm a copywriter, like you said, and I help people who are selling programs and courses, memberships online, stuff like that. I specifically help people who are wanting to transition to Evergreen or to improve their Evergreen sales system. So it's a lot of figuring out what's the best method and what's the best messaging when you're trying to be selling consistently every day, right? That's the dream for Evergreen course sales. And it does really rely a lot on messaging in that case, even more so, I think, than live launches do.
100%. I mean, I was just at our mastermind that our like high-end digital marketing mastermind, and someone was sharing their results from when they went from launch to evergreen, and I think it
Mhm.
was like a 15% conversion to a 5% conversion.
Mhm.
And these are all people who've been doing millions of dollars in courses for a long time. So it
Mhm.
just goes to show you, like, when you go evergreen, there's just less urgency, less scarcity, and that,
Yeah.
and just like less, there's not a live experience, which makes a
Yeah.
huge difference in people's buying
Yeah.
decisions. So
Yeah.
for the folks out there who've maybe never heard of evergreen before, how would you describe it?
So basically, your course is available to buy all the time. So when you're doing live launches, generally you'll have your course be closed, right? And so no one can get in for a certain period of time, and then everyone has to join, everyone has to buy within, a week or however you set up your live launch. With Evergreen, it's available to join all the time. There are people who are doing like interesting variations now where they're using tools like Deadline Funnel, and there's others like that where you can create a limited buying window, but it's time to each person. So for you as the course seller, people are joining all the time, but your audience might experience it as though they only have a limited buying window for that individual person. So there's sort of like there's interesting combinations and like in middle grounds, but that's generally the definition.
So hot off the press, I did not know this until literally 3 or 4 days ago. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
But so like this is brand new information. Like the only reason I know it is because I'm in this mastermind with all these amazing people. And have you heard, the FTC is like getting after a lot of people in this industry,
Mhm.
and they kind of have it
Mhm.
out for our industry. And they are uh really, really opposed to deadline funnel. Like they're putting down
Really?
anything because for them it's like, you know, the FTC, they think that it's unethical marketing. Like, what, you don't want to make someone think something just for them, but then have it be available for other people at a different price at the same time. So, because of that, I think
Interesting.
deadline funnel is going away, which means that
Wow.
messaging around what you do, the
Yeah,
messaging and copywriting that you do for Evergreen becomes even more important because now you can't rely
definitely.
on this like
Yeah.
false scarcity of a deadline funnel
The scarcity
that
and
means
the
like,
urgency. Yeah.
essentially if there's a page about, I don't know, like what's something we both like? You're an animal person?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So like let's say someone is an animal trainer,
Okay.
and I opt in for their webinar today on the 31st, and they're like, "Okay, you have 5 days to buy their animal trainer course at a discount."
Right.
But you hopped in tomorrow. That would mean you have 5 days from tomorrow. So
Exactly.
you can
Yeah. That's
see
the deadline funnel.
that's exactly what a deadline funnel is. And I think they're going away because of all this stuff with
That
the
is
FTC.
so
So
interesting.
it just goes to show like what you're doing is even more important than ever.
Yeah, yeah. Because that
Um,
urgency is, whether you're using deadline funnel or you're doing a live launch, it is a huge part of the motivation. Is that like, okay, it's going away. That's definitely like psychologically something that really speaks to us. When you want to take that away, or you have to take that away because deadline funnel is maybe not going to be around, then yeah, you need to have another reason to convince people that they need to buy today and they need to engage and they need to, they need this thing.
yeah.
And that comes down to having really, really compelling messaging.
So like give us an example of of that. Like what do you think is one of the juiciest ways to create urgency in like an evergreen funnel.
Yeah, yeah. So it's totally going to depend on each industry. But I do work with a lot of coaches and people who have these things that are just like very transformative, right? Like really, really impactful courses. But it is the kind of thing where you're like, oh, well, I could just do that next week. And I think that's true almost for any course. Like we're all busy and everyone's going to have in their head like, oh, well, this month I'm a little on, oh, the holidays and oh, the whatever. And it's such and such. It's back to school. Like there's always going to be that in someone's mind. So I think it's really about emphasizing how important this is. Um, and I hate to say, like, I don't want to suggest like being really heavy on like fear or any kind of like dark
Hmm. Hmm.
emotion, but I do think that sometimes something that can be powerful as well is to really, really help people understand that if they don't take action on this problem that you're solving, that there are going to be serious consequences, because there are, even if that consequence is just that they continue living in a state that isn't good for them, where they aren't happy. Um, so I think that being willing to really be upfront about that, and all that comes down to storytelling and just being a really, really good storyteller of being able to have people understand and see um, the problem that they're experiencing, how it is serious, the impact that it is having on them, and being able to believe that things can be different and things can be better.
I mean, it comes back to pain and pleasure, right? Like, what's the pain that
Mhm.
you're living in? What's the pleasure on the other side? What's the
Mhm.
pain on the other side if you don't make any
Yeah,
decision
yeah,
right now?
yeah.
Like, there's results or reasons. Like, that's all there is. You either get results or you have reasons why
Yeah, I
why
like
it
that.
hasn't, right? So I think, yeah, it's all, and it's different for obviously, every program, every expert who teaches the same kind of program, right? Like, all
Mhm.
this messaging is directly tied to the person creating it and their
Mhm.
story and the story of their clients and so on and so forth. But yeah, so important to be able to hit them, not hit them, that's probably bad, but connect with them,
Yeah, yeah,
where they can really get to a point where they make a decision. I think
exactly.
that's really the piece is we want them, whether it's a yes or a no, let's get them to
Exactly.
make a decision about what's
Yeah.
the best thing for them right now. Um,
Yeah.
and
And it's
I
never
think
about
the
pushing someone. It's never
yeah.
about like pushing people into it. It's about,
Hmm.
yeah, take an action, whether it is yes or no, instead
Hmm.
of just kind of letting that sort of thought, that problem like simmer in the back of their mind, which we all
Yeah.
do. We all do. We all have problems that are
Hmm.
just simmering back there.
Uh-huh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm excited to talk to you. Well, I should say I was especially excited about this conversation because you are, the evergreen queen, and so much of what people get into building courses for is passive income, which
Hmm.
most people, without realizing it, link to evergreen, right? Because this
Hmm.
passive income is this dream that many marketers are selling out there, that I'm sitting on a beach drinking a mimosa and I'm getting dings on my phone from
Hmm.
PayPal telling me that people have bought my program.
Hmm.
And it's like that can be a reality. I know people for whom that is a reality, but it's not, there's like a lot of steps to go from
Yeah.
I'm an expert that knows some shit to I'm getting PayPal dings on the beach. Like there's so much in
Yeah.
between there. And I
Absolutely.
think that if people knew what it actually took, they might realize that it's not for them.
Yeah.
So, what's your take on this whole how evergreen funnels create passive income? And do you think it's truly passive?
Short answer, no. And that is, I know that we like talked about, we were going to talk about that today and on Halloween because it is this sort of scary myth out there, and I see people getting in some serious trouble. Because people do believe it, people buy into it. People are like, okay, I'm going to be able to have this. It's going to run well. I'm taking care of my kids, or I'm living this like dream life, or whatever it is that the other thing you want to be doing. Um, and people can definitely get in trouble where they invest a lot of time and money into getting that set up and then it doesn't turn out the way that they expected. And that truth is just because, yeah, the passive income, I'm not sure I believe in at all. Like it's unless you're talking about like independently wealthy kind of things. Like
Right.
if you're putting work into a course and creating it, you're going to be putting work into selling it in some way. That might mean that you're doing a lot of work, building up kind of this copy and this messaging and building and fine tuning this system, which might take you a year or more of testing and trying different things. possibly many years to get to the point where you can go on vacation and still be getting sales and things rolling along consistently. Um, or it might be that you choose, live launches or these other things like that. But all of those take a lot of work. It can be, I mean, like selling evergreen is wonderful. It can be more consistent than live launches. It can be more sustainable, not only on an
Mhm.
income level, but for you and your health. Like I know a lot of people who live launches can just be brutal on your
Oh, totally.
on your body, on your
Yeah.
mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah, like evergreen can just be a lot more sustainable and a lot more consistent for that and for you, but it's not going to mean that you just put it up there and people are going to buy by magic. Like there's still work that goes into
Mhm.
getting those new people into your
Mhm.
funnel, getting in front of new audiences, marketing it, and yeah, testing it, adjusting it, changing it based on changes in the world, changes in your industry, seasonal changes. Like
Mhm.
you're going to be always doing stuff and bringing more things in. It's going to be work. Um
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah, I like what you said about being independently wealthy. I think it's people think passive and active. Like they think it's two things when really that's a spectrum here. Like to me, passive income, like the most passive income is something like a 401k. Like you put money
Yeah.
in and theoretically, if you do it right, you make more money, you make a return on your money. And
Yeah,
maybe you check it once a year and or twice a year. I don't know, it depends on your strategy, but it's generally pretty passive. You're not having to
exactly.
lift you're putting your money to work for you. And then there's like this kind of semi-passive world. Like I think about people who own I personally don't own any other real estate property other than my home, but people who have a home and then they have a long-term renter in there and they have a property management company who
Hmm.
manages the people in there and makes sure it's full. And it's like that's still pretty passive. I'd say it's semi-passive because you've got to manage the property management company, you've got to make sure they're doing their job, so on and so forth. But, you know, like it's a little more active, but still pretty passive. And then you kind of get into this space of even like owning a business. Like if you truly are not on the organization chart, you're not on the org chart, like you
Right.
own a business and there's a CEO in the business and you go and you check in on the business however so often and then you get distributions as the owner of the company. Like
Yeah.
again, like that's active but still kind of semi-passive. But
Yeah.
like this whole I just like have a course and it sells itself. There's so much to set up to get to that place. And like you
Mhm.
said, you're still feeding the top of the funnel. So like
Yeah.
to me, I think like the most passive is if you have, and I could be wrong, but just based on what I know right now in this moment, to have something like evergreen content, so like things that rank on Google, YouTube search, like videos on YouTube or blog posts that always perform. They're at the top of the search engine. So someone goes into YouTube, they type in your topic, they hit your video, they opt in through the email sequence,
Yeah.
they buy your course. But in order to stay ranked, you still have to pay attention. Like
Hmm.
I've got friends with hundreds of thousands of followers on YouTube, and them or someone on their team is actively checking those rankings and making tweaks
Hmm.
and adjustments every single week, which is
Hmm.
not passive. So
No.
it's like you can either get to a point where you are that business owner that, you have a business and other people are doing the work and you're making the passive income. But for most people in this like expert industry,
Yeah.
you're the face. What
No,
are the chances of you like actually just owning your own personal brand company? Like pretty
yeah,
low.
without being involved
Um,
in it.
so yeah, I think you're totally right. Like
Yeah,
it's there are stages to this game. You can get there, but it's never going to be passive in the way that most people are marketing to you. It's going to
absolutely.
be.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's definitely not going to be that way soon. I think that is definitely
Uh-huh.
a trap people fall into where they're like, oh, I'll make this, or even if they understand, like, okay, I'm going to need a funnel, I'm going to need content, I'm going to need this thing. There's this idea that you sort of write this, you put it out there, and you're done. And you're really not, especially at the
Mhm.
beginning. There is so much testing and so much fine tuning that goes into any messaging. Like, there's absolutely the first draft, no matter how good it is, no matter how well done it is, how well researched, how carefully you like did your customer research and all of this, you're going to be testing that. You're going to be optimizing it. You're going to be playing with all these parameters. for a long time before you get to something where you're like, yeah, like this is the maximum conversion rate.
Mhm.
Like
Well,
this is
and then the
good.
world changes,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Like, and then something changes in your industry and you
Yeah.
have to change your messaging to meet the new, whatever's happening now. So
Yeah.
it's even like the perfect message can only be perfect for so long, and then
Mhm.
something happens and you have to
Yeah,
adapt.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, we
So,
all had, the pandemic and everyone had to change their messaging around that new reality. There's election cycles and there's
yeah.
even just seasonal stuff like the holidays. There are a lot of industries where that has an impact, whether that's a point of the year where you sell a lot more, especially sort of like new year, new you kind of businesses, or
Hmm.
whether it's a time of year where you sell a lot less because of, whatever your industry is. Um, there's always going to be these ups and downs, and you're going to be kind of reacting to that and fine tuning to it. You might get to
Hmm.
a point where that's pretty like smooth, like it's you've got it under control and you just kind of know what you need to do. But you're never going to get to a point where you don't have to do anything.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice? It
Yeah.
would be nice. Oh, yes, it would be nice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the other piece is once someone's in your evergreen, like your kind of like flagship evergreen program, which I'd say
Mhm.
like most of them are under 997. Like I don't know if you're doing copywriting for any um evergreen funnels that lead to like a 1997 offer or something like that, but
Yeah,
I
definitely
find they're
stuff.
usually yeah, I find like they're usually 497 into the 997 range for those like
Yeah.
self-paced programs. And then from those self-paced programs, you want to have a higher ticket offer as well because it's
Mhm.
really like we want to maximize the lifetime value of our clients.
Mhm.
And which is like another piece about this passive income thing is people think like, "Oh, I can just sell my one course over and over and over and over again." But if
Yeah.
I look at my clients who are doing multi seven figures and multi seven figures, they get to a place where they have a whole product suite, and that's really what gives them sustainability because
Mhm.
rather, leads are not getting cheaper. So people are just spending more and more on ads to get people into that evergreen funnel.
Yeah.
And then it's like they buy their one product, but you're capped at how much you can make per person if you just have one product. So now we're talking about multiple different programs, multiple different products, and ideally a high ticket offer,
Yeah, some
which
sort of one-on-one
is
coaching or
not passive.
something. Yeah,
Like,
no, not passive at
no, it's
all.
not passive. So yeah, I think there's a lot to it. There's a lot to
Okay.
it. What do you think is like working right now in the evergreen space? And maybe it's something that's tried and true that continues to work, but I'd love like your insight into, yeah, like what's hot right now on Halloween of 2024.
And Halloween. Yeah, absolutely. I see a lot of people. I mean, obviously, everyone's using email funnels, and there's a lot of that, like very standard structure. We've got your ads or your content, you're leading into an email funnel, and you're being sold into this. Often it's a reasonably high ticket offer, so like 1,000 to maybe 2,000. Yeah, like you said.
Hmm.
I know some people who are selling more, but that would be more of like a B2B kind of
Sure.
situation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so those are working well, but absolutely, there are people using deadline funnel. That's been working well for some people, so that's really interesting if that's going to go away potentially
Just keep
soon.
in mind it's especially if they're making a certain amount of money. Like if you're
Mm,
making seven figures in online programs, then you really need to think about that.
that's
If you're not, then you're not really on their radar yet.
yeah,
They're not, it's not the juice isn't worth the squeeze for the FTC to come and knock on your door. Um, scary.
yeah,
Thinking about Halloween is scary, right? But yeah,
yeah,
I think if
yeah,
if you're doing seven figures, then you really gotta you want to look into a little bit. Yeah.
yeah. Another thing that I see working super well in Evergreen, that's something that I'm really excited about, is people doing these sort of events or group coaching kind of programs, but on a rolling access basis. And that's something that I think a lot of people feel like they can't do. And that's obviously again not passive, like if you're in there coaching, but it could theoretically be something you're doing for only a couple hours a week. Excuse me, but I think that it is just this super powerful thing to be able to be having your group coaching program, which is sort of that like standard style, right? But there's some like self-directed part, and then there's some sort of group coaching support. And while a lot of people feel like that requires having a cohort, I'm seeing more and more course creators open that up so that people can join the group coaching as they want. And you get some really, really interesting and powerful learnings from interacting with your peers, with other students in that course who are at different places. And it also opens up, I love seeing evergreen course creators playing around with like events and things like that, especially stuff only for their students. Just really building that community in can make it really exciting. Events are another awesome way to add that urgency in. So if you have a few events around the year, then before each one you can send something out to your email list of, people who haven't bought yet, and be saying like, oh, there's this really awesome thing coming up. It's only for students. It's, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be so great. And you're going to have to join before this date if you want to have access to that really awesome thing we're doing just for our students. So there's a lot of potential there to add these really interesting community dynamics, events, like different stuff and add-ons you can do just to make that experience in the Evergreen course really powerful. And every single one of those gives you something else you can add to that messaging or to that overall strategy to bring more people into the course.
Yeah, I'm such a fan of hybrid group programs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's so much you can do with, I mean, that's great info and insight into how to leverage it in your marketing and like infusing events to create urgency. There's also a lot you can do with the program itself. Um, because I think a lot of people, first they are concerned about like the market. It's like, if it's always open, is anybody going to know? What am I going to promote in order to get them to join when it's technically always open? And then they're like, well, how do I, on the delivery side, they're like, how do I handle people when they're all in different places? Like you have one person who's been with you for 6 months, you have the other person who joined you last week. Like, how do you support all of them on one Q&A call? And I think there's a few things you can do. First is when you're outlining your program and when you're building like the training portion of the program, have certain group activations, meaning like if there's an exercise that you do that's particularly important, have them bring it to the group call.
I
So
love that.
rather than just having the training component and then having the Q&A and almost having them separated, it's like you want to tell them what about the training program to actually bring into a Q&A call. Because I find a lot of people, a lot of students, especially in the beginning, like they're not even sure what to ask. But
Yeah.
they if you have them do exercises that you can give really good feedback to, that feedback will serve everyone on their journey, no matter where they are.
Absolutely.
So, like, that's one really good way to just like, even though everyone's in a different place, you can, engage everyone. The other thing I'd mention is you can do differentiated support calls, meaning like you can have support calls for certain levels of your program or for certain elements of what you teach. So like let's say there's a fitness program or like a health program. Well, you could have a call about nutrition and you could have a call about fitness.
Yeah.
So if the first thing they do is their nutrition, then maybe they're only coming to that call first. And then if the second part of what they do is they add on, exercise, then they could come to the fitness call. So you can have multiple support calls, or it's to say it's more even simpler. If it's every single Thursday at 9 a.m., the first Thursday is always about nutrition. The second Thursday is always about fitness. The third Thursday is always about hormones, so on and so forth. So there's ways
Exactly.
you can get creative with the delivery. So even though it's an evergreen cohort and people are technically in all different places on their journey, you can support them. And I think the other big thing to consider is having like a client success journey so that they can identify where, and this is from Stu McLaren. Do you know Stu McLaren?
No, I don't.
He runs the membership experience, I think is the name of his program. So he's a membership guy. But you can
Okay.
also apply it to any kind of program where it's like you have, okay, if there's 5 stages that someone goes through on their journey, having them self-identify where they are so that on those group calls, it just keys other people in to see why they're given the advice and the coaching that they're given versus someone else who's on like level 5, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So just some few hot tips, but I feel like you're right. Like from a marketing perspective, oh my gosh, how do I do evergreen cohort? And then from a delivery perspective, same thing. They're like,
Yeah.
How do I do
Yeah.
this and make sure everybody gets served? You know?
Yeah, yeah. But there's so much, it opens you up to so much creativity because you don't have to be like really focused on this kind of schedule of like we're launching, everyone's starting this day and then we're all going to finish this day and it all has to look like this and everyone has to be finished within this certain amount of time and that whole thing. You can just, it opens you up to be more flexible and be more creative. You can let people extend how long they're in and you can have like just this a lot more flow. Yeah. I mean, talking about, yeah, like selling to the people who've
High
already
five.
bought.
We are vibing. Yes. I am totally with you on this. I think this is like a huge missed thing opportunity. Like if I look at all my folks who've got like seven-figure companies and
Hmm.
eight multiple seven, eight-figure companies, guess what they all have? They all have a back-end membership. Every
Hmm.
single freaking one. Every single
Yeah.
one. And you're the easiest way to do it is just to extend support. So it's
Yeah.
like you get in my flagship program. Well, if you want to keep up the group calls, it's just an additional, usually a lower ticket option,
Hmm.
you know? So it's I think Alex Hormozy, I think he calls it like big head, long tail or short something like that, where they pay more up front and
Yeah.
then the
Yeah.
tail is less of an investment, but they've already seen the value, they've already connected with the group, they want to stay with the group,
Hmm.
and so now it's just like supporting them as they continue on their journey.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah. I
remember what he
like
called it, but something like that. Yeah.
something like that. Yeah. I like that strategy too, because I think there's this idea that, um, to do sort of the opposite and to bring people on at a small amount and then nurture them into a larger and larger. And that can work in some situations, but I think it's also important to remember that that moment when someone is first encountering you and first like getting excited about your offer is their maximum motivation. So you don't want to waste that on what ends up being like a really low ticket
Hmm.
kind of offer. Like get them into a real program where you're going to get some real transformation and it's a decent amount of money for you and
Hmm.
then give them some awesome results and then yeah you can either upsell them to like a much higher ticket sort of one-to-one like more specialized thing or just keep them on and just have them
Hmm.
keep hanging out
Hmm.
and once you
Yep.
start getting more and more people who have been there for a long time then yeah maybe you start adding on some more interesting supports for them or some different options
Hmm.
or kind of next level of your program that they can start playing with once you have that audience there and engaged. It's yeah. It's very
I
like
think
that's
it's
very
it's
go ahead.
super nuanced because like, you know, some people it's all about where are you starting now, which I think
Hmm.
is the hard part about this is there's so much overwhelm right now and so much input and so much
Yeah.
content and people hear like, "Oh, I should do a membership. I should do a challenge. I
Yeah.
should do a high ticket. I should do all the things." When really you have to think about if you don't have an audience, you
Hmm.
need to go high ticket because you need to make money.
Yeah.
Like, and
Absolutely.
the best way to make money that allows you to reinvest the business is usually a high ticket offer. So
Hmm.
you start with that, and then you have this recurring revenue from the support long term, and then you can build the programs
Hmm.
lower in the funnel, like your mid ticket and your low ticket, so that
Absolutely.
you do have something available for the people who come off a Facebook ad and don't know you, but they're willing to put 27 bucks on an
Yeah.
offer to see if you got the goods, which is the really important thing if you're doing, lower ticket to mid ticket offers, is those have got to crush. Like the content itself, especially if it's like self-paced and they don't have any access to you,
Hmm.
your program better be freaking fire or they're never going to buy anything else. And so that's
Yeah.
like, I think the misconception is people hear passive income, they go immediately to evergreen and they think like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm going to do this low ticket offer, but they don't have the reps of doing high ticket and one-on-one to
No.
make that product any good. And then they don't have anyone ascending and they're like, what the heck is, if they get, first of all, if they get the messaging right so that people
Yeah.
actually buy the low ticket. And then it's like, what is, so it's all of this thing of like, all of this stuff is right, like all of the content that you see out there is right, it just might not be right for you and where you are. So that's really the job right now, I think, is like discerning how this whole thing looks from
Hmm.
from a big picture perspective to then identify and discern like what is the best for you right now based on where you are and your goals. Like that's the whole game.
Yeah. Yeah. And I absolutely agree with you that the content has to be really good. And I think, I mean, even people who are really, really strong experts in their field and like have the info, that's not the same thing as being able to teach it really well. And I think that's sometimes a step that people overlook. I know that's like what you really focus on
Hmm.
is being able to take that like expertise that's in someone's head and make it really well taught. And maybe you can talk a little bit more about that because I know that that's something that's so important.
Yeah, you're totally right. And, people know what they know, but they don't know how to teach what they know. Like teaching is a
Mhm.
skill, just like copywriting is a skill, right?
Yeah.
Like it's something you've got to put the reps in, you got to put the time in to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And I think the less support involved in an offer,
Hmm.
the less room you have to get it wrong. If
Mm.
you're working with someone one on one, and let's say, you map out like a 10-week curriculum and kind of what you're going to talk about every week, and then you realize in week two, oh my gosh, they don't need X, they need Y. You can
Yeah.
pivot on a dime. Like it's no problem. It's no big deal. Q&A is the easiest kind of coaching there is because you just get to like file through your experience Rolodex and pull something out that works for them. But when you don't have someone asking you questions, when it's just you teaching to a camera,
Mm-hmm.
you've really got to nail like what's the right order, what's the right syntax, what's included, what's not included. And the only way to figure that out is reps. And
Mm-hmm.
then, you're backing, now you have an idea of what to include, but the how to actually put it inside of a program, and that's all instructional design. So it's a completely separate skill. Um, so yeah, you're totally right. People know what they know, but they usually don't know how to teach what they know. And it's a skill you need if you want people to buy more of your stuff.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, like it's super foundational, especially with, the course industry is really busy right now. There's a lot of people
Mhm.
out there. No matter what
Mhm.
you're selling, there's someone who's selling something who's at least similar. And potentially there's a lot of people out there selling something that to your audience basically looks exactly the same. Even if you know that you're doing something special, your audience might not totally understand that. So you have to be delivering really, really good quality
Mhm.
courses. And when you are, then yeah, if you have the right structures in place of basically you're setting up email funnels of like selling to your existing audience, right? You're basically treating them as an audience for another offer. Um, then you can have those people being in your world for potentially years and getting a really consistent income stream from them because they know you, they trust you, and you're delivering really, really great content and really, really great support
Mhm.
consistently.
Yep. Yep. And I'll say one thing too, because I think a lot of this we wanted to bring out the tricks and treats,
Yeah.
and the scary truth about passive income. And I think you're right. Like the course industry, the pandemic happened. Everybody had to go online, right? And I think we're in the filtering phase right now of the people who stick it out. The cream will rise to the top, and then it will be much harder to get into. I think one of the things that made everyone go online is like it just all of a sudden became very easy. The tech became
Mhm.
easier. Um, you know, all the online stuff just became so much more what's the word I'm looking for? Like accepted, that
Yeah.
going online just became a lot easier. So the cream is rising to the top. And I'll also say that if you are listening to this thinking like, is there is this even a viable option? Especially considering some of the, if there's like big dog competitors in your space. I want you to
Mhm.
know from working with a lot of those big dogs and a lot of the people who are just getting into it, often the big dogs are kind of out of touch in a
Mhm.
way that because it's been so long for them since they've actually created the transformation in their own life
Mhm.
to get to
Yeah.
wherever it is that the transformation that you're teaching. So don't discredit yourself if you're just a few steps ahead of your ideal client, because a lot of times those programs turn out better
That's
than
so
the
interesting.
people who've been doing it for 20 years, because a lot's
Yeah.
changed in 20 years.
Yeah.
And it to make that change today requires something different than making that change 20 years ago.
Mhm. Which speaks again
So
to that passive income idea, right? Even if you
mhm.
get to that dream where you have this whole system running perfectly, your industry is going to change, and your client's experience is going to change, and you're going to have to go back to the drawing board and refresh stuff, maybe even refresh the course, the course itself, in order to stay relevant as things
Mhm.
go.
Which
Yeah.
is one of those things. If you're like looking at a course about marketing or copywriting or,
Mhm.
um, sales, well, not necessarily all sales, but any kind of digital marketing, online sales, I would ask before you buy it, I would ask them, when's the last time you updated this and what did you update?
Yeah, that's a
Because
great
there's a lot
question.
of people out there like selling marketing programs and they're doing what worked to build their business 10 years ago. And it
Hmm.
might not be exactly what's working to build someone's business today if you were just getting started
Hmm.
today.
Hmm.
So it's like a really good qualifying question because, yes, you are becoming their client, but you're also hiring them as a coach or expert. So, like, you deserve to
Hmm.
have that question answered, you know? Just like
Yeah.
help people who are trying to figure out marketing but can't hire a marketer and trying to
Yeah,
DIY it. But how do I know if this is good or not? See how
absolutely.
often they
Absolutely.
update it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I totally
Yeah.
agree. Like, I don't want to discourage at all someone who's like really passionate about getting a course up there, like starting this sort of one-to-many consistent income, scalable income dream, because it is absolutely still possible. There are people who are still, launching their courses and building it successfully today.
Hmm.
Absolutely. You just have to be realistic and think about it. And there are
Hmm.
so many people out there teaching you how to do it in all sorts of different ways. And like you said, the advice may or may not be right for you and where you are, your audience, your past experience, your the person that you are. Um, so just really think strategically about it, and seek out people with sharing honest stories, not just people who are
Hmm.
sharing their story in the context of selling to you. Because those stories all have a spin. I mean, I'm the one who writes that spin, so I'm gonna those stories all have a spin if it's part of a sales funnel to sell to you. Not
Yeah.
that they're
Yeah.
dishonest, but they have a certain perspective. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
seek out people who are going to be honest with you about what it took to get to the point where they're getting those PayPal
Hmm.
dings on the beach with,
Yeah.
whatever.
Hmm.
Um, because I assure you that it wasn't a matter of I just create a course and I put it on my website and I post about it on social media sometimes. That is not what it took. I promise you that is not what it took.
No, not at not at all. Not
Yeah.
at all. Amazing. Well, tell us, tell us more about where we can get connected, learn about your work, and learn about what you do.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. So I'm on LinkedIn. That's where I post mostly, and a little bit on Facebook too. I have a business page, so you can look me up, CLEONIKI KESIDIS, and my business is CEK Copywriting. You can check out my website as well, and I'm actually just in the process of putting together and getting up there a really interesting checklist that's going to, like a free checklist that's going to give you everything you need to create to sell evergreen, because that is such an
Ooh.
overwhelming experience of, what do I need to write? What do I need to do? What pieces do I need? It's just a straightforward checklist of this is all the stuff that you've got to get written if you want to start setting up that infrastructure. After which you're going to test it. So it's not a one and done, but it's what you need to get that started. So that'll be up there very soon. Maybe I can send you the link to put under this
I would
episode
love
a little
that.
bit
Yeah,
later.
that's so, so, so valuable because in all of this overwhelm that we're
Hmm.
often being faced with content, it's like a lot of people are like, just tell me what to do. Like,
Yeah.
just if you can tell, especially for those who are like like professionals and implementers, like
Yeah.
they're not, what's the phrase? Kicking tires. They're not just like kind of dabbling, like, yeah, I kind of want to do courses, but I kind of don't. But like it's clearly they're not committed. Like for those people who are truly implementers, just tell me what to do. I'm gonna go do it. That's like the perfect resource because, and then you can almost use it as like here's what I feel confident doing, and here's what I want someone else to
Mhm.
take on. Or, um, I'm sure you have like an order and syntax on there. It's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
let me hire you to get my sales page done. And then based on that, I can go write
Oh,
my
for sure.
emails or what the
Oh
other
my gosh.
things, right?
That is my
So,
like absolute secret trick if you're on a limited budget is hire a
yeah.
professional to do like one key piece and then
Hmm.
use that copy everywhere else.
Yeah, like the sales page is that every other asset you need, at least from how I've done it in the past. Like if you use sales
Mhm.
page first and you get that right, everything else kind of will write
Yeah.
itself. Not
Yeah.
quite, but almost.
Oh,
Well,
please.
thank you so much. This has been just
Yeah.
such a pleasure, and
Thank you.
I can't wait for people to check out that checklist.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me. Hope everyone
Happy
has an awesome
Halloween.
Halloween.